Hi everyone, and welcome to our first edition of HR Spotlight by Indeed India. On today's HR Spotlight, we're going to shine our light on work from home. In the next 30 minutes, our panel of HR and TA leaders will dive into the pros and cons surrounding work from home and work from office, analyzing it from several angles and providing you with the insights you need to take the right decision for your company. I'm Rohan Sylvester, the recruitment evangelist at Indeed, and I'm your host for today. I have with me Mr. Rajesh T, Country HR Director for Cyprus India, Mr. Felix Jeffrey, Head of HR and in charge of Vendor Governance at HTC India, Mr. Sangram T, Senior Manager, Talent Acquisition for Skillsoft, and finally, Mr. J. Shankar Mahadevan, Head of Talent Acquisition, India and APAC at Blue Yonder. Welcome, gentlemen. So ever since the start of the pandemic, work from home has been talked about a lot, and there have been speculations on whether companies would eventually move a part of the workforce to a permanent work from home. In this session, we are hoping to provide you with some very powerful insights on this. The format for our show is very simple. We will direct some questions to our leaders, and they will have 2 minutes to share their thoughts on the question at hand. We have some great questions in store for our guests today, so stay tuned. First of all, thank you everyone for joining me. I'm really excited to host you here, especially because of the topic that we have for discussion here, something that is really important to me. So I'm going to start my first question to Rajesh. I want to start by asking, actually, this question is to everyone here, but I will ask Rajesh to answer first. I want to start by asking, what do you think is the number one factor preventing organizations from moving to a work from home anywhere setup, outside of the access to maybe immovable hardware?
I think there are two important aspects than one. I begin with the time, right? You have huge trouble managing your time because many of us as remote employees working from home, there are ample distractions, and those distractions are significant challenges in making sure that we master the required concentration and focus to get the job done. And very, very important aspect, which is logistics, the network, the printer, and with lockdown where people are glued on to many units of usage, I think we have a huge challenge in dealing with the bandwidth. For me, these two things stand out clearly.
Thanks, Rajesh. Thank you so much. That makes a lot of sense for us. I'd next like to ask the same question to Felix.
All right. See, I think the primary concern would be on the security front, right? It is basically, how you're able to protect and safeguard your customer data. And recently, we all know there's number of cyber threats that has drastically increased, making the remote workers more vulnerable. And once every organization is able to build a secure platform and to access their virtual office network, I think then working from anywhere should be possible. Just a note, we at HTC have in fact developed an AI-powered SIEM, Security Information and Event Management product that will be soon launching in the market. So for me, the most important thing is if you can have a secure network that is able to seamlessly enable everybody to connect, and I think every working from anywhere should be all right.
Awesome. Thanks, Felix, for that answer. Next, I'd like to direct the same question to Sangram.
Thanks, Rohan. I believe for me, the number one factor is assertive leadership and governance, per se. Just to elaborate a little around this, I'd like to refer to a movie, The Lion King, right? You have a lion who's portraying a king's role and who's loved and respected and followed by all the animals. He wouldn't remain that for long if he only operated from the cave, would he? Right? So just moving from there, a study typically states that 7% of the entire communication efficacy is verbal and 93% is non-verbal, the tone, the body language, etc. I believe it's going to be very challenging for leaders at every level to be assertive with their teams in a remote setup and ensure that the governance, the day-to-day activities, the timelines, everything is met in pact.
Thanks, Sangram. And I love the use of the example of Lion King, one of my favorite movies as well. And you're right, a king who doesn't show up is not going to be able to, garner that respect. On that note, Jay, the same question. What do you think is the number one factor preventing organizations?
Sure, Rohan. And first of all, thank you for having us here. So our co-panels also spoke, they expressed their viewpoint. And in my opinion, what could be preventing is companies just don't know what consequences may occur if they just open it up, because everybody is learning newly. People are facing the situation for the first time. Definitely, like Felix also mentioned, there are issues like a data privacy. We don't know where employees are based. It's not that everybody is going to have the same network. Security, everything can be prevented. So companies are absolutely double thinking because there's no precedent set, and they have to take every action step by step by understanding what's going to be the consequences of if you're completely remove, prevent work anywhere aspect. So they are thinking in all the angles so that it doesn't become a disastrous, and become a post facto action for it.
I completely agree with the lack of precedence being one of the biggest factors. I mean, this is something I don't think anyone could have foreseen or even be prepared for. I think a lot of business continuity plans for a lot of organizations kind of went out the window with this entire pandemic. My next question, it's essentially a statement and a question attached to that statement. I'm going to start with Jay. A distributed workforce gives access to a wider talent pool and makes hiring the right talent easier. What are the two primary challenges that a distributed workforce has, purely from a hiring standpoint?
No doubt that distributed workforce give you access to tap in more talent pool, right? There are advantages and there are disadvantages as well, right? So especially in the current scenario, wherein we know that what matters is end of the day, it's not butt in the seat, but how much of get it done kind of a point that organizations are looking at from multi-dimension aspect, right? So distributed workforce is good, but when you think of getting everybody in the office, it has got its own advantages in terms of how people can collaborate, how people can really kind of work towards one goal. So I know work from home or this distributed talent workforce is here to stay, but that's not permanent. Everybody is watching again cautiously to know that whether this approach is going to work or not. Again, it differs from every segment to segment, right? Of the talent. For certain segments, when I look at from a 360-degree holistic view, there are many segments: IT, banking, financial, sales, non-IT segments. Maybe for a small portion of the talent may work in this model of a distributed talent pool, which may not work for a specific, like a banking industry, like a manufacturing industry, wherein the needs itself is very, very specific. So what I would like to tell you is, it depends on which segment that we are operating today, what is the talent availability, and how exactly we're going to see this scaling up. But the situation, the need of the hour is these approaches, ideas are just kind of blooming now. We got to wait and watch whether that's going to really give us what organizations need in the newer way of working.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that answer. I'm going to direct the same question at Rajesh. Rajesh, our distributed workforce obviously gives access to a large talent pool. But what are the primary challenges for hiring a distributed workforce?
Two. According to me, there are two. One is the information inequality. And I say this authoritatively primarily because we hired few people who got onboarded virtually. That means technically they were in Hyderabad, in Chennai, and they had all the tools to access the information from the company. But there was an immense amount of information inequality. These guys were missing the hallway conversations and they were missing the majority of the discussions in any cases. Second, that also yields to the social disconnect, which is an upshot or a byproduct of information inequality. Think about a situation. If we are in a normal time, the way the person gets onboarded, even she or he goes back to work as a distributed workforce, there is a rapport built. People will have a meal or a drink. Everyone but your remote team member is still bonding and there is an opportunity. That gets missed and that can create a huge impact because an organization with people with a missing camaraderie can be disastrous. Therefore, rapport for me social connection for me, information equality for me are few of the key challenges.
Thanks, Rajesh. That brings up an interesting point on something that I've read about called the verbal history of a company. Like when you're working in an organization, you have processes. There are certain things that are always done a little bit outside of the process, and the best way to figure it out is to literally turn to the person next to you and ask them, like, how do I do this? And it could be as simple as where is the coffee, where are these things? And I think a lack of that can be a massive impact. My next question, and it's directed towards Sangram. What are the top 3 things companies can do to ensure that the culture of the companies thrives even during permanent work from home? I think this also touches on what Rajesh was talking about. What happens to the culture?
From a cultural standpoint, right? Culture, if you look at it, is more like sand in the fist. You let the grip loose and it starts slipping. You try to hold it too hard and it starts hurting. Right? In my opinion, to keep the cultural piece alive, right? There's the top 3 things that I'd like to share. One is keep the ball rolling, right? Try to keep the work from home schedule kind of similar to the work from office schedule. For example, the crew briefs, the debriefs, the team meetings, etc. Perhaps the timings could change depending on people's availability, but the processes can be tried to keep as similar as possible. The second one being breaking the ice, right? Continuing to keep breaking the ice. This is more from a people manager, leader's perspective. Every team member needs to be heard and spoken to. The one thing that is reduced in the work from home aspect is the number of conversations that we have, right? And perhaps one of the easiest things to fall out in this is the one-on-ones that we used to have earlier, right? I think those tend to miss out or slip out easily through the gaps, and those are the meetings that matter really the most. Also, the third one being continuing to keep having fun. A well, themed meeting or an agenda for a virtual fun activity involving all the team members should definitely go a long way, in my opinion.
Thanks, Sangram. Felix, the same question to you.
Sure. See, our organization, basically, before I go to the culture, is built on the core values of simplicity, honesty, and humility, based on the principle of truth. Having said that, for me, the 3 most important things would be, like, it's more of a behavioral aspect for me. Like, everybody has to showcase more of an empathy, standing by each other and assisting your downline by offering support. And then the second point would be for me is to delegation of work or responsibility. Everybody should start thinking about being receptive to new ideas from other members and various avenues. And the third important aspect would be to just continuous learning, upskill. These are the primary, or rather the 3 most important things that I would see. Probably I would add one more aspect to it. It is a great time to let go of personal indifferences and unnecessary EGOs, which is an absolute productivity drainer.
Definitely. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I think working from home in this sort of silos, egos will have to let go if any organization wants to succeed. But I want to also add one small thought that has been floating around. The idea that culture is an outcome of what we had, and culture is a ever transitioning thing. I am looking forward to maybe culture will transform as a consequence of the fact that we're working from home. Maybe the culture becomes different, becomes something else. And I'm hoping something like that happens. My next question is to Rajesh. According to a study by Nielsen Norman, the fully loaded cost of an employee is at least 2 times their salary. So isn't there a huge cost implication of working from office? And maybe there is an argument there for working from home becoming more permanent.
It's a very interesting question, Ron. I think my answer probably could be split, because on one side, if I look at the company, I'm looking at the expenses that the company can avoid: mortgage, lease, utilities, janitor services, office supplies, coffee, water expenses, team building events, equipment, furniture, so on and so forth. But also look at the cost now that I have to incur working from home. My AC is running, there are 2 lights, and then I have to invest into this couch to make sure that I take care of my backache. So technically, I'm paying for my utilities, right? I'm working from home. My electricity bill, my lights, my air conditioning, and other expenses may also include my personal computer, printer, office supplies, coffee, and my food intake has gone up. And also, there is an element of uncertainty that how long do I need to deal with this? Because there is a burnout, right? And then we constantly get exposed to invariable interactions that we do. One for India office, another for Europe office, one for United States office. So environment is getting uncertain. And finally, the safety. There is a health hazard. Though we are protecting ourselves from COVID, but there is a lot that could be brewing inside our body. So it is tough, but there is a trade-off for both the offices insisting people to work from home and people who are working from home that are craving to back to be at the office.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, I will also echo the eating way too much more than I normally would be if I was in an office. Now, the same question to you, Jay. The cost implications of having an office, and having an employee at office. What do you think?
Absolutely, Rohan. No doubt that there is a cost implications. At the same time, what's going to happen to the existing infrastructures now that we know everybody is working from home, and there's no one answer to it, right? Whether this work from home is here to stay, is it going to become permanent? No, the industry has recognized that work from home was once it used to be a privilege, of course, for not every company. Now it is like there's no choice, right? Again, I would go back to my previous point. Work from home is here to stay, but that cannot be permanent, in my opinion. Imagine the kind of office real estate floor ratio and the cost of investment that have already gone in. What will happen from an employee standpoint also? Some of the missing aspects, such as what will happen to those small coffee breaks, that social corner time that you typically spend in office, your whiteboarding sessions and stuff like that. I'm not saying that's not happening in the current virtual world, but how much effective is that? Yes, the debate is productivity is up and running, is getting higher and higher. The answer is yes. At the same time, we also need to look at people are slowly, gradually getting into this work from home fatigue. Zoom meetings, virtual platform meetings, that fatigue is also building. The trade-offs, what people or employees will be happy is, oh yeah, I'm going to save precious 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, depending upon where you stay, how far from the office. But that trade-off people would love. But now initially people were absolutely happy. But right now we got to look at, okay, like Rajesh mentioned, what kind of internal mental health effect that's also it's bringing in. Not everybody has got a fixed schedule in a work from home scenario, right? You got to take up calls as early as morning, and it can go as long as in the night as well. Although there are good tips and tricks, but it's not that everybody can follow in the virtual world. And hence I strongly believe that it's a matter of time. Every situation that world has faced in the past also has come back. It's like a cycle, right? It has to get stabilized at one point of time, and a lot more people are going to see a value in coming to office and really kind of enjoying the environment of office, thereby, and it gives them a lot of other advantages to kind of work at their highest peak level. Is what my opinion is.
I completely agree with that. I think people will start appreciating the office a little bit more. I mean, I'm not looking forward to the commute. I live in Bangalore after all, but I still do look forward to going back to office, meeting people, and just that fatigue from Zoom calls. I can definitely see that happening. So the cost implications, I think, for a company, even though there is money being spent to keep an employee in the office, there is that sense that it's worth it at some level to give them that option, to give them that opportunity, especially from a mental health perspective. My next question, I'm going to start with Felix. Do you agree? I mean, this touches on what Jay and Rajesh were talking about. Do you agree with the thought that prolonged work from home can have detrimental effects on mental health and social interaction? If yes, what do you think employers can do? I mean, I think we can all agree that everybody on this call thinks there is some effect on the mental health and social interaction. What do you think a company can do, what employers can do to ensure that people are staying focused, committed, and happy?
Yes, yes, Rogan. See, yes, it can be harmful or detrimental. You can definitely negate it. That's my point. It's like you need to basically engage on a regular video communication. Rather, basically, on the when you're talking about the productivity metrics, you basically have to outline the expectations and keep monitoring the progress when on a regular interval, and keep throwing suggestions all the time, rather than bringing up a sudden surprise to your downline. And one more point would be like, see, it's going to be a bit of a challenge when you were to manage a bit on the slack side on the non-performers. We need to be really subtle, and just have to have a private message or emails, not by sending very, very, in a group mail or something that's going to be like really a negative impact. Which I foresee, like, somebody reading it over and over again, and then it can get into a really decrease in morale and create a serious stress. Professional meeting aside, I would say a dedicated Friday tea party, or whatever parties that you could probably have it virtually, where teams could catch up and talk about everything apart from work. Small groups or bigger groups, it all depends on the wavelength of the group members. It's basically to openly share their feelings and thoughts on a casual note, similar to what we were just saying a while ago, talking in an office cafeteria. From the employer's perspective, like, what at HTC, we offer regular wellness programs like meditations and yoga sessions. We have a meditation center in each of our premises, and we have been doing this for ages, more than 7 years or so. We also provide psychiatric treatment to, counselors available on a hotline. You can reach out to them anytime. And these are some of the things that an employers can do to ensure that all of the employees are also productive as well as happy. And the last thing is to ensure that there is no negative spat of rumors that's spreading around, typically on a pink slip or laying off. That's a real drainer. We need to ensure whatever possible ways and means to avoid this, and whatever, like, the managers have to keep talking on a regular basis to ensure all of them are hale and healthy with their thoughts. That's my point here. Thank you.
Thanks, Felix. I'm going to direct the same question to you, Sangram. What do you think organizations can do to keep them focused? Sorry.
Okay. More from our see, it is of course going to impact. There are going to be a lot of detrimental effects from a continued work from home standpoint, because the environmental changes are typically overlooked, but they matter. Moving into new city, new apartment, new country, the expectation and the reality battle is never off. Right. I'd like to first kind of pinpoint towards the detrimental effects. The first one on my list would be procrastination. Right, that is very, very easy to creep in. With lack of peer motivation, audience that we're used to working with, these procrastination germs are like very, very highly to latch upon people, and no amount of sanitizer is washing it off. Right, that's not helping. So, moving on, the other thing that I really feel can hit people, and is the personal and professional cocktail. Right, what I mean to say is, when we leave home, go to office, we are likely to leave home baggage at home. It could be conflicts with siblings, parents, spouse, kids, etc. And the same thing, when we're leaving from office and coming back home, we are likely to leave the office baggage at office. Could be customer escalations, could be issues with colleagues, managers, etc. But with the work from home, I believe it's kind of getting to become a deadly cocktail that everybody has to have, and I don't think everybody can digest it with that. And leading to hangovers, of course. So I think to be able to, again, get rid of these things, I think, certain spending time with your people, trying to reorganize the schedule, it is really going to help. And most importantly, the conversations. The managers, the people managers need to talk to people. Everybody is made differently. Everybody has different social barriers, challenges. extended families, smaller house, bigger house. I think that thing really needs to be known to the managers at least, so that they can anchor those team members accordingly.
Definitely, Sangram. Thank you. Both those answers from Felix and Sangram were great. And it makes me think about something that we've also been discussing at Indeed. And it's something we tell everyone that you can't, at least in an office setting, is a very controlled setting. You know exactly what's going on. And you make assumptions basis that. We don't, as you were saying, Sangram, we have no idea what's going on in their home. If someone is shot, it could not be because it doesn't necessarily mean because they're unhappy with the work that you're doing. It could be so many things. I think if there is one takeaway here is like, I think we'd have to give people a little space, a little more compassion, empathy. And if we work on that front, we should be in a much better space. I'm going to come to the last question, and it's to all four of you, and I'll start with Jay. Jay, so there are two distinct schools of thought when we talk about productivity, right? While there are a few who say, I feel more productive at home, no commute, more flexible. And there are some who find it very difficult to maintain productivity because there are too many distractions around or for whatever reason. So how do you think companies could manage these two different sets of people? Because typically, and it's well known, right? When we create a process, when we create policy, it tends to be a one size fits all kind of policy. How do you think companies are going to be able to handle these two types of employees going forward?
Well, going forward, COVID, like it has taught a lot many lessons for all the corporations and for the human beings also, right? So I know for the fact that right now companies are all looking at framing these policies, learning from each other, because no one has clearly come out saying that, hey, you know what, post-COVID, this is how things are going to work. Probably companies would be a lot more flexible. Of course, everything is going to be within the policy guideline or framework. What are certain roles that can be off the shelf, not too much of an office dependency? What are certain roles that absolutely requires that very, very close collaboration? You got to everything is absolutely interlinked to the job role that you play, the scope and scale. Example, your inside sales or your business development. We know there are certain roles which requires just internet, laptop, and a phone. You're good enough, right? Regardless of where you stay, you still can get the work done. There are certain roles which requires your office presence. Imagine the salespeople, the customer success people in the current world, right? How much ever you try to convince your customer, the new sale deal needs to be taken place. You got to go and sit in front of your customer and try to sell your solution or a product, understand what their needs and stuff like that. I can very clearly see that companies are absolutely trying to learn from each other. What's going to happen in globe, what's happening in US versus EMEA versus in India. It's going to be an amalgamation of all these things from a policy standpoint, from how corporate governance is going to come through in terms of how to really kind of cater to both these segments of employees while having the flexibility, at the same time coming out with an overarching policy which can serve for both the categories is how I foresee in the post-COVID times, Rohan.
Thanks, Jay. And there's something very interesting you mentioned that brought up something in my mind. You mentioned that you want to go sit in front of the client, and I was just thinking, well, what if the client is also working from home? So it's all changed. So there's going to be very new scenario.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Same question, Rajesh. What do you think companies can do with these two different types of employees?
That's a great question, Rohan. I completely agree. And it's a universal truth. There is no one size that fits all. My company has segregated people into heavy metals, hard rockers, easy listeners. That tells you the story that heavy metals are the ones who need to be in the office because they have dependency in the lab. They need to work on the kits and labs. Therefore, they need to be there. The second category can have a restricted entry to the office, but easy listeners who can work from home and can be still effective can continue working from home. But there are two schools of thought. One, someone like me who hit my 50 last January, want to go to the office. Rewind yourself way back into 2020 January. You and I worked very hard, Rohan. We came home, and the definition of home was a place of relaxation, safety, and security. It's a place where we subconsciously slipped into a calm, easygoing state of mind putting the stresses of the workday behind us, right? Now, when we are home or we are working from home, there is a blurred line between personal and professional life. And I love the word Sangram used, the cocktail. That's absolute, definition as how it can impair our thinking, because we work from home and we no longer have a clear division between the workspace and the personal space. I am on this. I am ashamed to be on this. Fortunately, I'm not, fully exposed. But I honestly didn't have time. I had 3 meetings. I literally had to excuse myself to jump into this meeting 2 minutes before this meeting started. That means working from home punches a hole right through that neat mental division, or that mental discipline that we have right here. 100 days into working from home, ask me, I feel that I'm never off the job. I always feel a compulsion to get just one last thing to be done before I go to the bed. Now I know what weekends are. I'm sure few of you, like me, look for weekends more than ever before.
I agree completely. Weekends have become like this godsend. Like, I am, as you said, I'm only switching off during the end of the week. You tend to be on all the time and can be detrimental. Same question. I'm just going to direct it to you, Sangram. What do you think organizations can do from a policy standpoint to cater to these two people? There is, because in any organization, not just offices, any sort of schools, colleges, when you have a group of people and you treat people differently, there are going to be issues creeping in. What do you think an organization can do in those cases?
I think I'd like to, I'll agree with Rajesh when he said that it's going to be hard. It's going to be daunting to come up with something which is one size fits all. It's not gonna. It may not work, right? It may not be even possible for us to come up with something like that, because typically I would, just the way Rajesh classified into hard rock, heavy metal, etc. I kind of distributed this into 2 parts. One is the self-motivated ones, and the other one are people who need motivation, right? The self-motivated ones really don't need a whole lot of supervision, mentoring. Hey, do you need help, etc. If they need help, they'll reach out for help, right? So you let them work in their space, right? Give them only as much as they need. The next category, which needs some sort of a motivation, it could be, just seeing some sort of peer competition, or just, appreciation for managers, or mentoring, or constant touching, saying, hey, is everything good for you? People like to be pampered. Some people like that. But I think that classification, if the people managers, functionally are able to make, saying, hey, this is my motivated audience. Okay, I don't need to invest too much. I'd rather come up with different strategies for these folks. So I think that kind of an approach is far more recommended from my perspective than having a one size fits all, saying, hey, everybody follows this.
No, but yes, Sangram, I agree with you. But I am very curious because, and I think it's going to be a problem, and this is open to everybody. The unfairness might creep in. Like, as you said, there are some people who need to be motivated, and there are some who don't need it. And a lot of organizations are going to have that issue. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how do you deal with that kind of situation? What would you do if one person, let's put a scenario, if someone comes to you and says, hey, why am I working from home office when I could be working from home? That kind of a scenario. What are your thoughts on that?
I have a great answer. I'll take that.
Sure, Rajesh. Anyone, I was glad.
The hard rockers who are heavily dependent on the office equipment labs are the ones who are protected by us by being home. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm looking after them. I'm taking care of their good health by not infecting them if I'm infected, right? So technically, they are given a badges. These are our warriors. These are our soldiers who are fighting the battle being in the office. And our only job, our only religion is to protect them. And the only way to do it is not going there.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much, Rajesh. Felix, same question. You're the last person. You have the last word. It's usually, or maybe me, I might have the last word. But the same thing. What do you think HTC could be doing? What, from a policy standpoint, going forward?
One fits all approach, definitely no. I would definitely say that, look, it is an individual defining a work schedule and model that works and fits well for that particular person. So it's more of an individual rather than the employer trying to put some emphasis on trying to, you can do all of that. But at the end of the day, it all have to come from within, And I've got something here on the productivity front. See, it's basically like I've been practicing this as well. Like you have to identify your MVAs and your LVAs. The MVAs, I call it the most valuable activities that you do. And the LVAs is the least valuable activities that you do. So what you do is just push on all your LVAs to your downline or let someone else manage it. And you hold on to your MVAs, which will definitely enhance your productivity. So that you can try to consciously define a plan on the everyday task and manage your own progress card. And then that will help you to progress weekly and then look at the overall objectives. So that is one area, like one aspect of it. And most importantly, like, where Rajesh is talking about, like, and even Sangram, I think you should be able to know how to work without supervision. Your boss is not going to walk around the cubicle, walking all over the place, checking on you. So most importantly, like, it's more of your dedication, more of your focus. I would say that's going to be like 2 layers of people. One of those is like, who can have been used to that practice of having self-discipline and able to manage themselves from within, as I said earlier. For me, if you ask me like personal question, like what works for you working from home, a nice comfy chair. Rajesh mentioned, yes, you need to invest on that. A well-ventilated room with good lighting is sufficient to get my day started. I take ample breaks whenever my body signals that, and I have my periodical email checks, not to keep checking it all the time. And apart from that, I keep myself hydrated. I drink a lot of buttermilk, lemon juice, and some nuts to snack on. I used to tell my guys, even the last meeting that I was having, one last thing that, I would also want to put in here. Being busy doesn't mean that you're productive. Yes, I think I will. That's my note, and that's my take on this.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And really, it's really interesting that that you brought that up. That being busy doesn't mean you're productive. It's something I also like to live by. And I think there's this future where there is, I think, a scope now for teams and organizations to actually give this skill set that Sangram and Felix and Rajesh and Jay were talking about maybe now there is a need to kind of teach employees how to manage themselves. Like, as you were saying, there are some who need that motivation, some who need that thing. Maybe it's just an outcome of work habits that need to be changed. I think there's scope for that kind of changes to the future. So with that, on that note, we have come to the end of our discussion. Firstly, I think there were some really great insights and some really amazing analogies about heavy metal. We got the Lion King as well in there. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure having you, gentlemen. And thank you, Jay. Thank you, Sangram, Felix, and Rajesh. I appreciate it.